All of our earned value implementations involve producing graphics using earned value data. XY charts or trend charts will be the common ones. Many customers are implementing Winsight as well as Cobra and may well use Winsight for those types of reports. But Deltek Cobra does have some standard graphics included in the Cobra package that you can use for some of this if you're not implementing Winsight. And in this video, we're going to take a look at making some improvements to one of those graphic reports, the curve report. We suggest before you take a look at this video, you take a look at another video that's online that's called the overview of the Deltek Cobra reporting architectures to give you some background. And then please note that while we're logged in this video, we're logged in with System Administrator Cobra's System Administrator privileges. So let's take a look at how the standard Cobra curve report runs. So I'm going to start it up. I've got my project selected. The standard report produces a chart for each control account, so it's nice that it runs charts for each control account all at the same time. I'm selecting my basic calendar, and these are the cost sets that are drawn on the chart by default. Note that the report template that's used is called curve.xlsx, so that we'll come back to that later. So let's go ahead and run it. So here's the standard chart that comes out. Let me zoom in a little bit. So here's the standard chart that gets produced. So there's a couple of problems with this. So I wouldn't use it in its current form, but we can fix it up. So a couple of problems here. One is the ETC line is being drawn on here, which we don't need. We've got EAC, which makes more sense, the sort of purple line. ETC doesn't make any sense. It just goes along the data date until it goes along the x-axis until the data date, and then is drawn from there. So we want to take that off. The actuals line is being overwritten by the EAC line, so we want to change that so that we can see the actuals line. And then the actuals line, the green line, continues after the data date out to the end of the project, and the same with the BCWP line. Both these lines should stop at the data date and not continue on. So we want to make those changes to this standard report. So getting rid of the ETC is pretty straightforward. We just don't include it in the cost sets when we're prompted for it. And then to have the actuals line be visible, we draw the EAC line first and then the actuals line over the top of it. So these lines are drawn in the sequence of these cost sets. So we want to swap EAC and actuals around. So let's do that. That's a pretty simple change to make, and then we'll come back later and we'll change the report template to tidy up some of the other things. So we'll just go through the standard prompts here. So I'm going to take ETC out, and I'm going to have EAC here before the actuals line. And now if we run it, you can see that it looks a little bit cleaner. So now our actuals line is, so ETC has gone away. So now our actuals line is being drawn. Now the colors have changed because we changed the sequence, but now the actuals line is the purple line. And you can actually see it, and then the EAC line picks up after the data date, and that's the green line now. So we still want to stop the actuals and the BCWP lines at the data date. So we're going to have to edit the report template to be able to make that change. Essentially, the graph is being drawn from this table of values underneath the chart. So we need to stop Cobra populating the BCWP and the ACWP lines after the data date. If we stop it populating those values into that table, then the graph will stop drawing the lines after that as well. So we can just delete those values from the table here, and those lines will stop at the data date. So what we need to do is we need to get the report to stop doing that, because we don't have to edit every one of these charts to make that kind of change. We want the report to do it for us automatically. But first, let's take a look at the standard curve report and see what the report template for that looks like. So remember, the standard curve report was called curve.xlsx. So let's go to the folder where the report templates are stored. So on this setup, it's where the Cobra installation has been created. So this is the installation folder where Cobra sits on this workstation, and the report templates folder is here. So the report templates folder contains the standard templates that come with Cobra. If you remember, the Curve report uses a report template called curve.xlsx. So let's open that up and take a look. So this is the report template for the Curve report. So you can see the graphic itself. You can change the attributes of this graphic, and that would affect the report that gets produced. So you can change the various attributes of that. So the way this works is for each criteria, we're going to get a graphic, and our criteria is control account by default. So for each control account, we're going to get a graphic that's based on this graphic object. The values on that the lines pick up are from the table that's underneath the graphic, right? So the table is actually drawn by these two rows. So row 21 outputs the month headings or the period headings for the top of the table for each, so you get heading for each period. And then row 22 processes each of the cost sets for that control account. Just widen this so we can read it. So this processes the cost sets for each control account. So we get a cost set description, so budget, actuals, earned, and then we get in the table itself, we get the value for each period for each cost set. So this is what basically builds up our table of values on which the curves are based. So the thing to notice is that each one of the cost sets, whether it's a budget or an actual or the others, is handled in the same way. It doesn't differentiate between them. So they all just place all the values for each month in that table. So what we want to do in their modified version is we want to have actuals and earned value handled differently. We want those to stop at the day-to-day. So let's take a look at our modified template. So what we do is we don't change the default template. We copied that template and create another template called Curve GRH. And this is our modified template that we're going to use. So I've modified the graphic object just a little bit. I put the legend underneath the graphic rather than at the side. So you can just change the format legend if you want to do that. So that's at the side of underneath the chart now. And I changed the format of cost set 3. So that's a green dashed line now. So now this modified template is set up such that cost set number 1 needs to be the budget, cost set number 2 needs to be earned value, cost set number 3 the EAC, and cost set number 4 will be the actual. So we need in the wizard to supply the cost sets in that sequence in the list. Cost set number 5 isn't going to be used. So then down here we've also modified the tables, that the rows that set up the table underneath the graphic now. So now we're making the data source for the chart a little more complex. We need to be explicit about where the x-axis is coming from. So we need to add this X series report tag to row 21, the row that populates the period labels at the top of the table. So this tells Excel to use the period labels for the x-axis when it runs the report. So now rather than having one row that handled all the cost sets, let's say cost set N, now we've got different processing for the different cost sets. Cost set number 1 is our budget. So that's not doing anything different than it did before when it was in the other report. Now cost set number 2 is going to be earned value. So we've got at the point where it's placing values into the table on which the line is drawn, is checking to see whether the value is for a period that's before or after the status date. If it's after the status date, it's going to put an NA in the period, in the cell. If it's before the status date, it's actually going to put the earned value for that month, the cumulative earned value for that month. So this is basically using an Excel if formula to do this. And tags like cost project or status date are Cobra report tags that it makes available so that you can use it in this type of formula. So cost set number 3 is the EAC, so that hasn't changed from the standard one. And then cost set number 4 is the actuals, which we want to be drawn up to the data date again. So we basically got the same processing we had for the earned value. So that's how that table is built using these statements. So now we've made this report such that it needs to have the cost sets in a particular sequence, but it handles them differently. So let's see how that works. So let's go back to Cobra. We're going to run the standard curve report, but we're going to modify it and save it to a new name at the end. So let's run through. We're still going to use the control account, the basic calendar set. So now we're going to get rid of the ETC. We want our third cost set is going to be EAC, and our fourth cost set is going to be actuals. And we're going to not use the curve template. We're going to use curve GRH. So this is basically pointing to the folder where all the report templates are. And we'll save this. We don't need the report options. We'll call this curve GRH. So now our modify report comes up, and now we've got a cleaner looking report. So now you can see our actuals line goes up to the data date, and then the EAC line picks up from there. And our BCWP goes up to the data date as well. And our EAC line is in a nice dash format, so it's a bit clearer. So I think this is a lot cleaner report. So our table underneath, you can see some of the formatting could be tidied up here, but you can see now we've got NA being shown after the data date. So that doesn't matter though, because I'm not going to use this table when I present it to anybody. I'm going to use this graphic. So in our next video, you're going to see how to copy these graphics out of this Excel form file into a PowerPoint file where they're easier to present and